The topic for today, Communicating with Your Donor Family, is presented by Jacquelyn Kates. Jackie Kates is a licensed social worker and senior family services counselor at Gift of Life Donor Program. She's been with the organization since 2014. Jackie is certified in thanatology, which is the study of death, dying, and bereavement. She obtained her certificate from the Associate of Death Education and Counseling, and she's earned her certificate in mindfulness-based stress reduction from the Myrna Brin Center for Mindfulness through Jefferson University Hospital. She's currently pursuing her licensed clinical social work, her license in clinical social work, and will complete her supervision in clinical hours in May of 2020, which is this month. So exciting. Jackie obtained her BA in criminal justice from the University of Delaware and her MSW from the University of Pennsylvania School of Social Policy and Practice. So, Jackie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is such an important topic, and I am privileged to be able to talk to you about it today. And as Talia said, I definitely encourage you to use the chat box and ask any questions that you may have. If you have a question, I guarantee that somebody else in this program also has the same question. All right, so we'll get started. So we're going to be talking about writing to your donor family today. And before we really get into the nuts and bolts of today's program, I just wanted to get an idea of how many people today in attendance have written to their donor family. So number one is yes, and number two is no.
It's at the bottom of your screen. There's already a bunch of people who, almost everyone, who have answered the questions so far, which is awesome. This is really helpful for us. So far, 20 people, 21, see, I don't want to say it because I know that more people will answer. So far, 21 people have answered, and 7 have written to their donor family, and 15 have not. So that's a pretty, I mean, this will be really helpful for all those people who haven't so far.
Absolutely. So I hope by the end of this presentation, you 15 that have not written your donor family have some of your questions answered and maybe feel inspired to put pen to paper and get started. So thank you so much for answering our first poll question. So what we're just going to review today are the frequently asked questions that I get from recipients. So like I said, this is not comprehensive. If there's anything that I don't answer, please feel free to ask. So question 1, when can I write my first letter? There's no timeline. Really, it's about when you feel ready. That is the best time to write. So there is no waiting period of 6 months. Sometimes transplant centers recommend that their patients wait 6 months to a year. You certainly do not have to follow those guidelines. It's about when you are ready. What should not be written? We do have to remember that this is a confidential process, and we want to keep both your identity and the donor family's identity private for now. So anything that would be considered identifying information, including last names, addresses, emails, phone numbers, social media accounts, where you actually got your transplant, specific names of doctors, specific place of employment are just a few examples. If you do include this information, that is okay. What our department does is we read all of these letters very carefully. And if something's included in there that would identify who you are, we will redact that information and make a copy and send the copy on to your donor family. So this is a huge question. I don't know what to say. How can I ever express my appreciation? And it's so imperative to remember that there is no perfect letter. If you are waiting for the perfect words, the perfect thing to say, the chances are you're going to have hundreds of crumbled letters and you're never going to send one off to your family. So here are just some things to consider to help you get those creative juices flowing. Acknowledge your donor family's loss. And you can really narrate your process here and say, you know, I'm having trouble finding the words to share with you how grateful I am. Specify the transplant you received. It's very possible that your donor donated many different gifts. So to know that the right kidney recipient is writing or the left lung recipient is writing helps the family differentiate and really get a better feeling of who you are. Share how the transplant has improved your life or changed your life. And this can be something super significant or something that isn't earth-shattering, just really, you know, important activities that someone may take for granted. So are there certain foods you can enjoy again? Perhaps you weren't able to drink more than a cup of water a day, and now you can drink as much water as you want. Or you're able to walk up and down the stairs without oxygen. Those are so amazing, and donor families love to hear how you're doing. Discuss your family situation, hobbies you enjoy, or what you hope to achieve in the future. You are allowed to include a picture if you would like to. And most importantly, ask questions about your donor. When we lose people we love, often we lose the opportunity to talk about them as much as we normally would. We lose the opportunity to share their name, share funny stories. So it's really an honor to be able to talk about their loved one with you, and families really welcome that opportunity. What if my recovery has been challenging or I've experienced medical complications? Should I still write? You can absolutely still write to your donor family. Donor families are very aware that in order for you to have been eligible for a transplant, that you were likely very sick and had a lot of struggles to overcome. So you're welcome to write, and you're welcome to share your recovery experience as well. We do encourage you not to go into too many medical details, just because that can be triggering to families. And we also ask you to pay attention to what you feel comfortable with sharing. So there's no obligation to share any more than what you are comfortable with. May I type my letter? Absolutely. Not all of us are blessed with beautiful handwriting, and sometimes typing is just easier to read and also easier to get that flow going. So if you prefer to type your letter, there's actually a place directly on our website where you can type your letter and submit it directly to Family Support Services. Or you can type your letter and mail it in to us as well. And we'll get into that more in later slides. Okay, so it's time for the next poll. This question is for the 32% of participants that said they have written their donor family. So we're curious, how long did you wait before you wrote your first letter? And we have a bunch of different options here. Choose the one that is most accurate to how long you waited to write. We'll give you a few seconds to think about your answer.
Yeah, and I think I figured out how to share the poll results.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we'll do this, and then we'll give it like a minute or two, or let people do it, and then when we end it, I can try to share it so everyone can see.
Great.
You'll have to let me know if that works.
All right, does everyone feel like they had enough time?
A few more people. So again, the poll option is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You click poll, and then it should come up in the box for the answer. So it looks like, let me end it and see if this works. Okay, can you see the poll results?
I can. So it looks like the
Oh,
the highest percentage of people, 44%, waited 1 to 6 months before writing after their transplant. The next largest was 6 to 12 months at 33%. 11% waited 1 to 1.5 years. And then we jumped to 5 or more years, which is 11%. And I think that 5 or more years is really important because I think that really does a great job at demonstrating that there is no timeline here and it's when you're comfortable. So thank you so much for sharing. Sorry, there we go. Did I skip one? No, we're good. Okay. So what if I'm not ready to write? Can someone else besides the recipient write? Yes. So anyone in your support system who wishes to write is able to. So if you don't want to write, but it's really important to your partner to thank the donor family, or perhaps your kids really want to share how your transplant has changed your life, they are certainly welcome to. It is really important that the recipient's information is included on a separate piece of paper. And we go into that a little bit later. The reason being is if we don't have the recipient's information, we do not know which donor family to send the letter to. And it would be really a shame to have a beautiful letter and not be able to forward it. What if the donor family isn't ready to read the letter when I send it? So every single letter, and this practice is followed for recipients as well, each letter is placed in a separate envelope. And there's a cover letter that accompanies it that says, inside is a letter from your recipient. And the family can make the decision whether they want to read the letter at that time or save it for later. And like I said, if you do get a letter from your donor family, the same exact practice is followed for you too. And this is so when you open an envelope, a letter doesn't just fall out into your lap, because that can be incredibly emotional and overwhelming, especially if you don't have time to process it and get that expectation ready. How do I send my letter? So this is the information form that I was alluding to earlier. So with your letter on a separate piece of paper, we ask that you include your full name, your date of transplant center, and the organ you received. And the address where you send your letter to is Gift of Life Donor Program, Attention Family Support Services. This is so your letter goes directly to our department. And then the Gift of Life address, which is 401 North 3rd Street. And we do have this handy flyer already designed for you. So if you want to snap a picture of it, or as Talia said, it will be posted available on the Family House website later. Please feel free to use this form. And this helps us identify who you are, who your donor family is, and any return correspondence that we receive, we're able to send directly to you. How do I know if my letter was forwarded? So our department, once we receive your letter and once it's forwarded to the donor family, you'll receive notification from us. This is where having your return address is really important. If we do not have your return address, we will inform your transplant center that your letter has been received. And so it is, sometimes they won't always be able to notify you that your letter has been forwarded. So taking that middleman out can help expedite the process. It's also important to note that our department does receive a lot of letters, which is so amazing, but it may take some time before your letter is read, processed, and forwarded. So that is something to keep in mind. It's hard to be patient because it's an exciting process, but we do get a lot. Will I hear back from my donor family? So unfortunately, we cannot guarantee that you will hear back from your donor family. And we can't guarantee that every donor family will hear from the recipient. However, just because you do not get a response immediately, that is not indicative of the fact that you will never hear from your donor family. And I put this note on here because I think it's so amazing. One of our donor family volunteers heard from her husband's recipient for the first time 18 years after transplant. So the reason why I share this is because we never want anybody to give up hope that they won't hear from their donor family. All right, so here's another poll, guys. Have you received a letter from your donor family or heard back from your donor family if you've written?
So this poll again is at the bottom of your screen. It's an easy one. It's a yes or no question. We'll let, maybe we'll give it a minute. This has a time on it, so it can tell me. Okay, it looks like it's slowed down. So I'll just end it and then share the results. Okay.
Okay, so 38% have received communication from their donor family and 63 have not. So I'm not sure how many of this percentage of people have written first or haven't written. So that would be, something interesting for us to think about the next time we do this presentation. But thank you for sharing, guys. Okay. So if I do not hear back from the donor family, may I send another letter? Yes, you're welcome to write as many times as you would like. Writing has really therapeutic benefits for you too. So I think it's a really important process to engage in if it's something that has meaning to you. And additionally, even if a donor family does not respond right away, the potential is always there and your letters are very much treasured. And I do know, just looking at some of the names that are attending with us today, there is a very special recipient here who writes his donor family every single year. And to the best of my knowledge, he has not yet heard from his donor family, but that does not stop him from conveying his gratitude and really outlining how his transplant has changed his life. So kudos to you. I'm not gonna name you out loud, but thank you for honoring your needs and also honoring your donor. May I send a gift to my donor family? So we really encourage you to contact our department before you go ahead and send a gift. It's really important that we talk together and ensure that the gift is coming from a place of gratitude and not coming from a place of feeling obligated. So we'll discuss together on a case-by-case basis. An example, a favorite book, a poem, an ornament, those are all things that we would all probably decide are really meaningful and would be okay, versus a $200 gift card for a shopping spree. That's probably something we would encourage you to not do. So those are just some examples. Can I meet my donor family? So this is something that's always sensationalized in the media just because it's so incredible and it's such a unique opportunity. And it's certainly possible, however, it is not guaranteed. And the process begins with building a relationship through correspondence. So your first step is always going to be writing letters. The reason being is we take direct communication very seriously. And our department follows a very detailed protocol to ensure all key stakeholders, meaning you, your donor family, transplant center, and organ procurement organization are all on the same page and support of moving forward. All of us really want this to be a positive experience for you and for the donor family. It's also important to remember, once information is out there, you can't take it back. So it's really important that everybody is comfortable and has the same expectations. So this is very prevalent in today's kind of atmosphere with social media and Facebook and Instagram and all those different platforms. What if I think I found my donor family on social media? Can I bypass this process and connect directly through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc.? So Gift of Life Donor Program and Family Support Services strongly advises against recipients and donor families from playing detective and connecting online for so many different reasons. The first may be, even if the timing sounds right, the circumstances sound right, you may be incorrect. And it can be another loss for the donor family to build a relationship with you only to find out that you're not their loved one's recipient. And that can be really difficult for recipients as well. Even though it's really well-intentioned and coming from a place of excitement and gratitude, seeking someone out when the process is supposed to be confidential can really feel like an invasion of privacy. And unfortunately, it may have the opposite effect of what you're hoping to achieve. And lastly, correspondence allows for the building of a relationship. So this enables both the recipients and the donor family to determine whether they actually want to connect and have the other party in their lives. Remember, again, once your information is out there, you can't take it back. So having the opportunity to get to know the other person via letter is really a safeguard to make sure that this is someone you want a relationship with. What do I do if a donor family reaches out to me on a social media platform? So this absolutely goes both ways. It's not always recipients trying to find their donor families. We have a lot of donor families playing detective and trying to figure out who their loved ones' recipients are. So as difficult as it may be, we ask that you don't respond. We encourage you to contact Family Support Services and your transplant social worker if you do have a good relationship with them, and inform us of the issue and really continue to follow our correspondence process. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but we do have these guidelines in place for a really good reason, and that's to protect you and your donor family and really set the foundation for a meaningful and positive relationship. Okay, so before I move forward, I am noticing that we have a lot of action in the chat. Should we check that out now, or should we save that for frequently asked questions, Talia?
Sure, we could go through, there's two specific questions. I think one was, and this is, maybe you can report on what's happening with Gift of Life, but because of what's happening now in the United States and businesses are, on lockdown or not going into the office, the first question is, one, what if they send a letter now? Like, will it be delayed because of how things are moving right now? And then secondly, are you aware of, like, if there are other OPOs and whether they're still, I know there's many OPOs, so you can't really report on everyone, but any suggestions on if there is an OPO who is not, who is not supporting like the communication at this time because of not being in the office, what suggestions you might have?
So that's a great question. Each organ procurement organization and transplant center is handling this situation differently. For Gift of Life, we have 4 counselors and an admin. Our admin is in the office 3 days a week, and each of the counselors goes in once a week. And when we're there, we're ensuring that we're getting all of the letters that are in the office and we're processing them as normal. I would say right now, letters are actually being processed a lot quicker just because things have slowed down. So now is definitely a time to write if you're feeling inspired. But no, everything is moving along just as it was. We're not stopping everything. Other OPOs have, OPO stands for Organ Procurement Organization. Other organ procurement organizations, to the best of my knowledge, are doing something similar and are forwarding correspondence the same way. Transplant centers are a little bit different. They are certainly not going into the office as frequently as we are. So that could certainly be a barrier to getting your letter forwarded to the donor family. I'm sorry, getting letters forwarded to you if we do not have your address on file. That doesn't mean you won't get those letters. It just means that there absolutely will be a delay. So that's a really good question. And I'm sorry, I feel like there was another one, Talia, but I don't remember. I'm sorry.
No, that was right. And then, so I guess the follow-up to that question was any suggestions if there is a delay or that you're not able to correspond because your office is, the OPO is not open. Or not that they're not open, but they're not going into the office as frequently.
Right. So my suggestion would just be to write as normally. Your letter will absolutely be forwarded, and people are, going into the office sporadically, at least at our transplant center partners. So it will absolutely be forwarded as soon as somebody is in the office to get your letter. So I would not let the current situation stall you if you would like to go ahead and write.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question someone had mentioned, which I think would be good to have it split up into answer in two different ways. So the first one, which you sort of talked a little bit about during confidentiality, but if there's a recipient who wants to know who their donor is, how can they find out? And then we're sort of a similar style question is, how do they know who they're writing to? Because the donor family could be a wife, a daughter, a son, how do they, I think you're going to go through this, but anyway, so how would they?
So both are excellent questions. In terms of how do you know who you're writing to, we are going to get to that in the next slide. So I'm not going to answer that quite yet. If it's still unclear, I can certainly go into more depth. But in terms of how do you find out who your donor is, unfortunately, you really can't find out who your donor is unless you write and unless you hear back from the donor family. Similarly, you and your identity is just as protected, and we wouldn't ever tell a donor family, this is your recipient, they live here, this is how old they are, this is what they do, this is the food they like to eat. Those details we can't share, and we wouldn't share about your donor either. So it can be, incredibly frustrating not to know about the person that has given you this gift. And that's why it can be really important to write, to give yourself the opportunity to perhaps learn more if you want to. Those are good questions. So one of the primary things I hear is just like, I just have no idea what to say. I don't even know how to get started. So we are going to try and give you some suggestions on the next slide to help you combat writer's block. And all of this language is, if I can get to the next slide. You. All this language, these are just suggestions, so please feel free to be creative and use different language when crafting your own letter. You don't have to follow any of these. They're just, just ideas to get you rolling. So in the beginning, you don't know who you're writing to. You don't know whether it's a wife, you don't know whether it's a friend, you don't know whether it's a sister or a child. And that can be kind of odd to write a letter to somebody who you are unsure who the recipient of that letter is going to be. So here are just some ways to start your letter. To the family of my hero, that kind of covers everybody. Dear donor family, or kind of skipping it all together and just saying, hello, my name is so-and-so, and I'm the blank recipient of your loved one. Or to whom this may concern, or hi, my name is. If and when you receive a letter, hopefully you'll get more of an idea of what the family looks like and get a name or get a person who you can identify future letters to. In terms of the middle, I'm so sorry for the loss of your loved one. Please know that I will honor them with embracing the second chance of life and taking good care of their gift. There are no words to accurately express my gratitude. Thank you for saying yes and or honoring your loved one's decision. Because of your loved one's gift, since the transplant, I am able to. I hope to learn more about the individual that saved my life. And these are some of the things I would like you to know about me. And in the middle, you can ask as many questions as you want to about your donor family and your donor. Remember, these are just suggestions and are by no means comprehensive of what you can share and ask in your letter. And how to end your letter. Signed, a grateful recipient, sincerely yours, always with gratitude, love. You can sign your first name. You also don't have to share your name if you're not comfortable. So it very much depends on what feels right to you. Okay, so we have one more poll. Describe any barriers to writing to your donor family. So to the 15 people who haven't written yet, I really encourage you to respond to this because hopefully we can provide support around these barriers and help you move forward if you decide that's the right decision for you. So the options are, I couldn't find the right words. I was told I had to wait at least 1 year. I felt guilty and did not want to reopen a wound or remind them of my success. I experienced complications in my recovery and didn't know how to tell them. I wasn't ready. I didn't know I could write. I was unsure of where to send the letter or other.
I know there's a lot of options for this, but the last time we did this, we actually had a lot of people indicate other, so we wanted to try to come up with other options for them that we've heard from transplant families over the years. Hopefully, this will help to address some of the barriers, this presentation, but I know that, this is a difficult process. So far, we have 12 people who voted. I'm going to give it a few more seconds to encourage, see if there's other people who want to vote as well. And even if you have written, you can still vote as to what the barriers were when you were in the beginning stages of this writing process. I can see if we have other questions too. Jackie, you don't have to answer this now, but I think it's a good time, we could put it off towards the end of the presentation, but someone did submit before this had started that their team won't tell them anything, their transplant team. And I know that, and again, we go back to the confidentiality aspect, but I know there are times where some recipients will have heard from their team like little pieces of information, and then some won't. So I think it is a good point to talk about it towards the end of this presentation about how that sort of works.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to share these results. 18 people answered, which is awesome. And this is what the breakdown looks like.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm really glad to see these numbers. I think the next slide that we'll go over will really help all of you kind of get a feeling of what this experience is like on the other end. And maybe for those of you who were feeling guilty or didn't know what to say or had some complications, will really get the assurance that they're looking for, that it is a really safe, beneficial process to write, and donor families so deeply treasure receiving these letters. Okay, so what Talia and I learned from our last session was it would be really valuable to ask donor families, who are the experts here, about correspondence and letter writing. So these were the questions that I posed to I posed to donor families through our donor family Facebook group. We posted it and shared in our Gift of Life ambassador email, and we had so many amazing responses. So I'm going to share with you some of those responses, and yeah, we'll go question by question. So and these are all to donor families. What do you hope to hear / learn from your loved ones' recipients? That they are doing well, possibly how life has changed for the better, and what they're able to do without restriction, what milestones they've been able to reach since transplant, i.e. graduated school, got married, learned a new skill, etc. Share your hobbies. If there's a hobby you shared with our loved one, it brings comfort knowing there's a common interest. Share your story. I just want to know that they're okay. I want to know that all those simple things that we take for granted in life, they're able to do. Whether it's spending time with family, going back to work, enjoying a hobby they had long been unable to do, I apologize. It doesn't need to be something earth-shattering. Is there anything you would not want to hear or know from your loved one's recipient? I am open to hearing everything and anything. My biggest fear, especially at the time of donation, would have been to hear that they died very soon after or had transplant trouble. But if that is what happened, it happened. It does not diminish the gift given. And here's a very honest answer, which I think goes back to the importance of just being aware of how much medical information you're sharing. Honestly, I don't want to hear how much medication you need to take. What may be some reasons why a donor family does not respond to a letter? My dad is a prime example of this. He was beyond thrilled to get all of the letters, and he keeps them in a very safe place and treasures them. But my father would never be able to write back to the recipients. Between his difficulty expressing himself in general and his overwhelming feelings when he talks about his wife of 40 years, it would be very hard. I would say, especially if right after the loss, that the donor family is dealing with a ton of immobilizing grief. The recipient should be told that it's nothing personal if they're concerned about a lack of response. I think it's also really important to consider that there's so many reasons why a recipient may not respond to a donor family. So it goes both ways. Do you have any advice you would like to share with recipients that are feeling guilty, which is serving as a barrier to writing? So I can't tell you how many donor families responded to this question, and it was just so amazing to hear. Every single one of them was so concerned about a recipient feeling guilty and experiencing survivor guilt. In all caps, you did not cause their death, but you did give their life a purpose that was beyond what anyone could have imagined. You did give my family peace, knowing that her life story had an amazing end, and you did allow my loved one to live on, and I am grateful for you, and I only wish you the best. Your letters give us a sense of connection to those we lost. Yes, it is emotional, but it's also very healing. Hearing one recipient's story gave me peace that someone's life really changed. Never feel guilty. Although difficult, choices of donation are made to not only help others in need, but also for our loved ones to live on. Your letters bring us a sense of peace. I want the recipients to know that my husband did not die to give them an organ. My husband died. That's sad, tragic, and heartbreaking. But the only good thing that came from my husband's death was that he helped people live. I want recipients to know that the organ they received was a gift meant for them. Please do not feel guilty about accepting the gift. I want you to enjoy the second chance at life and live every minute. What is most challenging about not receiving a letter from your loved one's recipients? Just not knowing if they're safe, not knowing if they're okay, not knowing if the transplant was successful. The most challenging part of not hearing from them is I worry about their survivor's guilt. I don't want anybody to feel badly. It helps to know that they're doing well. So that was just some of the incredible feedback I heard from donor families. So I hope that hearing those responses really may help you kind of attack those barriers that are stopping you from writing, and assuage any concerns you may have about feeling guilty or about potentially causing more harm than good and reaching out, or just not knowing what to say. Okay, so that brings us to questions and answers. So I think, I really encourage you to ask any questions that have arose during this presentation, or if there's anything that you would like me to expand on, spend more time on, this is certainly your opportunity to do so.
Hi, Jackie. So I wanted to have two questions that were submitted. Actually, the first one is the one that I already brought up about the transplant team sharing information. So
Yes.
if you want to touch on that.
Absolutely. So transplant teams are not supposed to share information with recipients. Sometimes, depending on the mechanism of death of the donor, there are some things that are shared with the recipient, especially if it is considered a high-risk death. And that enables the recipient to make the best decision as to whether they want to accept that gift or not. But otherwise, transplant teams really aren't supposed to be sharing information. And best practices would be that recipients and donor families don't know anything about each other. That being said, sometimes the team is discussing certain details in the room, things are overheard, or your team is just so incredibly excited that you are getting this gift that they share something just in the moment of joy and don't really consider the potential consequences. So it can be frustrating, especially when you hear of other recipients in your community knowing a lot more than you do. But as I said, it's really a case-by-case transplant team by transplant team process. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And then the other question that was submitted ahead of time, which you and I talked a little bit about before we started, was, and this is directly from the individual, they said, I lost my 23-year-old son 7 years ago and donated his tissues and long bones. Is this something that I would share or should share with my donor family? So this person is a recipient also.
Yeah, so there's no should here. If it's something that you would like to share with your donor family, I think that's amazing. To live and experience both sides of donation is incredibly rare. And if you have lost someone you love who gave the gift of life, enhanced the lives of others through organ and tissue donation, I think that's a really special connection you share with your donor family and may bring you closer together. And when you lose someone you love, everybody's grief and loss experience is different. So not that it would be the same, but you have absolutely experienced that loss and know what that grief feels like. And again, that can just be another way to build and bridge a connection with your family. So if you feel comfortable sharing, by all means, definitely do so.
Okay, thank you. So I think there's time for one more question. There haven't been more, which is great. It means that we answered a lot of questions that we got last time. And this is actually like a two-part question. And I think I know what the question means. So they asked, is there always a donor family? And I'm assuming it means like, what if there's not a next of kin to write to?
Yes, so that's a great question. There isn't always a family. Sometimes the legal next of kin is a healthcare proxy. If an individual does not have any family, there may be someone identified by the court system that handles their medical affairs. Or if there is no family, but there is a friend, that's still someone to write to, but it wouldn't be a donor family, so to speak. There are instances, unfortunately, that we are not able to forward a letter because it was a court-appointed person or family has moved and has not updated their contact information with us. But it's not something that happens overly often.
Okay, and that pretty much answers the next part of the question. It's like, how can someone be an organ donor without a family member's consent? So if there's no one to make that consent, how does that work?
Right, so that would be through a court-appointed person, or at that point, the hospital, the head of the hospital, and the ethics team would be involved in that decision.
Okay, thank you. And that actually leads into really wonderfully one of our topics next in the month of May, organ donation to transplant surgery. So all of the back end, the process that takes place to really, the process for the organ donation and how the organs get to transplant recipients. And that will be one of our transplant coordinators through the Gift of Life Donor Program later this month. So it's already 5:04. It's been a really great talk so far. Thank you so much, Jackie. Everyone had really wonderful questions, and thank you for participating in our polls. So we will be sending out a survey on your experience in this presentation today. It's really helpful for us for future presentations. It's actually how we got the idea of doing polls in here. So please fill out the survey out. They'll be emailed out. This has been recorded. We will make it available on our website in another week or so. And please look to our website for other past webinars, other resources. Also, I posted the links in the chat box of where you can find those resources. So our caregiver page on the Gift of Life website, as well as our private online support group for transplant caregivers. I posted the link for that as well, and I encourage you to participate if you are a transplant caregiver. Again, thank you so much, Jackie, for participating. Thank you again for everyone who joined in today, and hopefully you'll join in for our future webinars as well. So thank you.
Thank you.